joy when we can come together in worship and in praise of a God that's so good to us, to a Lord who has saved us. I do not take that for granted. Every time we come into His presence and begin to worship Him, I start checking myself. God, is there anything that's displeasing to you? Put your finger on it, and I'll give it to you, whatever it might be. And if you do that, He will do that too. So just be ready. It may be something that you love dearly, but He says, this, back off. And be willing to do that, because He'll replace it 10 times over with something that'll bless you. I want to do part 2 of a crumb from His hand. This is my 4th message on Jesus moments. I love the thought of having Jesus moments. Those are the moments when He steps into your life and does something special. It might not be huge, might be very small, but He's doing it, and He's blessing you. I want you to see the power of faith. I want you to take home with you that power of persistent faith. Faith that you do not back off on. Faith that does not wane or run out or become thin. And what the result of that kind of faith producing Jesus moments in your life might bring forth. The results of Him moving strongly. That's what I want you to see. So in Matthew chapter 15, verse 21 through 28, as we read last week, leaving that place. Now that place was over in the Gadarenes, on the other side of the sea, where Jesus had just cast out a whole platoon or a legion of demons out of the maniac. And He left there, and He withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. There was a Canaanite woman from that vicinity that came to Him crying out. And that word is a forceful word in the original. She was hollering, crying out with tears and those guttural type powers. Just, Jesus! Those kind of movings. Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terror. Not answer a word. It gives the connotation that He totally ignored her. Nobody likes to be ignored. Didn't bother her. His disciples came to Him because they saw that He was on their side. They came to Him and urged Him, send her away, for she keeps crying after us." It bothered them. He answered them and her, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and threw herself or knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." She came back, "Yes, it is, Lord. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed at that moment. Let's pray together for just a moment. Father, your servant stands before you. And I ask that you would give an anointing in this house, that I might deliver what you've laid upon my heart with all the authority, yet tenderness with which it was given to me. God, I'm asking that you would survey the hearts that are here, those listening by computer or however. I'm asking, God, that you would move upon us and that you would touch as only you can. And we'll give you the praise, the honor, and all the glory. In your name, Jesus. Amen. Last week, we looked at Jesus arriving in Tyre and Sidon and being approached by a woman that was from that region, which meant that she was a Canaanite woman. The Canaanites to the Jews were evil, despicable people. So you can imagine a woman from that region that was a Canaanite coming up to the Lord and beginning to plead with him to heal her daughter who was possessed by a demon. Jesus finally told her that he was sent for Israel and the children of Israel, and it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Now, I don't know how you would feel about being called a dog, but it didn't seem to faze her. Moments like that opened the door for faith to be exercised. Now, we talked about all of those things last week. And I closed out last week by letting you know that your faith will not be defined by what you receive from God as much as by what it takes to stop you from getting to God. What does it take to stop you from praying? Stop you from believing? That's what will define your faith. If your faith's not big enough to overcome those things, then you're 90% defeated already. But faith, in view of obstacles, and you might want to write this down, will move you. Faith in the face of obstacles will move you from saying, oh, what now? To a what's next mindset. When you have faith, even though obstacles are coming against you, they're not defeating you and they're not pushing you down because somebody didn't get an answer, because you're ignored. You don't give up. Instead of saying, what's next? You say, what's next? Instead of, what now? It's, what now? You see the opportunity of your faith growing to be able to overcome every obstacle. That's what I want you to take home. That's what I want you to understand. So let's look at the opportunities of faith for this woman. And to do so, we look over in the book of Mark, chapter 7. Same story, but Mark has a little different take on it. Mark chapter 7, verse 26 and 27, we're going to read. The woman was a Greek, born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. First, let the children eat all they want, he told her. For it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Same story, same responses. Jesus speaks with this woman, looking down at her because she's knelt. She's down on her knees, crying out to him. But even in that, he never closes the door or slams the door of hope in her face. You read both accounts. Even though he ignored her, even though he said it's not right to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs, that never shut the door. He didn't say, shut up, lady. Jesus wouldn't have said that anyway. He would have said, be quiet. And if it was in King James, it'd be thou quiet. When you've been in the ministry a long time, you learn how to interpret these things. In Mark's encounter, he records Jesus as saying, let the children be first to be filled. That word first was what this broken-hearted mother needed to hear. It's kind of like you're standing in line to get in someplace, and somebody steps over and says, just stand here a minute. These people's going in first. Well, the moment you hear that, you say, okay, they're first, I'm next. And that's what this woman was hearing. She needed to hear that let the children be filled first. You cannot have what you are looking for this moment. But there's another moment coming. Jesus said, I've come to the children of Israel and they must be filled first. So that took the meaning to her that seconds were available. And you know, sometimes seconds are better than firsts. So she was encouraged. Faith will cause you to be encouraged. So when I allow faith to be the rule of my heart, when obstacles come up in my way, I'm encouraged because I can step over them. I can go around them. I can go through them in the power of Almighty God. You see, sometimes God allows obstacles that are thrown up, and in this case, by Jesus. They were not placed in front of you or her to discourage or defeat. So Jesus wasn't saying what he said to discourage her or defeat her. The obstacles were placed there to mature her faith. Sometimes your faith needs to be matured. You've got to grow in faith. And the best way to grow in faith is by overcoming obstacles, by seeing your faith work when life was saying it won't work. That's when you can get really encouraged and strong. So watch the progression for this lady. In verse 22, she calls on Jesus based on his role as the Jewish Messiah. In verse 22, she said, Jesus, or Lord, Son of David. That is the Jewish Messiah. He had to be a son or from the lineage and the household of David. She knew he was. So did everybody else. So she called on Jesus because he was a son of David. But she received no help there. That didn't work. She had no right as a Gentile to approach him on that authority. The Messiah was coming for the children of Israel, for the Jew, not for the Gentile at this point. So Jesus looked at her, and that Canaanite woman calling out with a good need, he didn't answer that because she had no right, no authority to call on him as the Son of David. So then we look at verse 24 and 25. She hears Jesus tell her that his mission here on earth is to the nation of Israel. When she hears this, immediately she moves beyond seeing him as the Jewish Messiah and calling on him as the Jewish Messiah. She now sees him as her only hope. Not the Messiah anymore. Not by that authority. She sees him because of who he is and the miracle worker that he is. And she begins to worship him because he is worthy of worship. And in verse 25, she bows down to him, humbles herself at his feet, and gives him the worship that he deserves, and she appeals to him to help with her needs as she worships Jesus. A whole different ball game. It turned everything around. She could have got upset. How dare him call me a dog? How dare him ignore me? No. In Matthew 15, 26 and 27, she heard the word. It's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. And she came back in verse 27. Yes, it is, Lord. Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Now she hears herself compared as a dog. The Jews looked at all non-Jewish people as dogs. And they treated them as such. The word they used to describe a Gentile refers to a mangy mongrel, inferior dog, a mutt, a street dog. That was the kind of verbiage that they used. It is used as a metaphor of a people who are unclean, filthy, dirty. Jesus used that word back in Matthew chapter 7, verse 6, when he said this, don't give what is holy to the dogs, those mangy, mongrel, inferior people. Don't give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under feet and then turn and tear you to pieces. So that word Jesus used there, but not here. This word for dogs, casting the children's bread to the dogs, really means puppies or family pets. Those nice, not mangy, dirty dogs, but the family dog, the puppies. That's a pet in the house. An animal that's looked upon as part of the family. That's the word that Jesus used to her. And I imagine, now this is Lewis 2 and 4. You will not find this in your Bible. This comes from the thoughts of a crazy man. I believe that Jesus might have had a twinkle in his eye when he said that. Because he wanted to see her response. How bad do you want it? Are you going to get offended and walk away? Are you going to get mad and bless me out? Or are you just going to walk away sad and say, oh, forget it? So there was a little twinkle in his eye when he said, we don't take the children's bread and give it to the puppies, the family dog. she says in return, you know, you're right, Lord. It's not right to take the food from the children's table and give it to the dogs. But even the dogs are often treated to a morsel that falls from the table or that children give him. I don't know if you had a dog in your house, but if you did and you had a kid, that dog ate well. Because anything you didn't want, the dog got. And my dog would eat green beans, butter beans, fat. It didn't matter. You hold it down there, that dog's eating it. So we look at these words and we begin to understand some things. Jesus is not trying to push her away. He's trying to pull her in. The disciples can't understand this thing. Get rid of her. We don't need her following us. And all the time, Jesus in his heart is saying, oh, yes, we do. We need to touch her need. So she says, even the dogs are often treated to a morsel from the master's table. And all I'm asking for is just a crumb. I'm not asking for the whole loaf. I'm not asking for everything that the children get. I'm just looking for that puppy's portion. I want that little morsel, and that'll be sufficient. Just drop some off to me, Lord. That's what I need. Just a touch from your hand. That's all I need. Can you see how Jesus took this woman and her small faith and kind of led her along and helped her grow in her faith until she gets to this place where that crumb will be enough. I don't need a whole loaf. I don't need the banqueting table. All I need is just a little. The obstacles of faith almost always, and please hear me, the obstacle to faith almost always turn out to be opportunities of faith in disguise. So when you're believing for something, when you're praying about something, when you're calling on God for him to move, he's the only one, he's my only hope. And suddenly the door is hard to get open. There's a resistance. Suddenly something pops up in front of you that's an obstacle. That's an opportunity for faith to become stronger. Sometimes you have to push the door of faith open. Sometimes that obstacle has to be overcome. And every time you overcome an obstacle, the next time you face it, oh, I've already overcome that. Yeah, I can do that. And that obstacle is not an obstacle anymore, because faith is stronger than the obstacle. And that's what Jesus was bringing her along for. When we continue to seek the Lord in spite of every hindrance, we will eventually see him do what needs to be done. And we are stronger for it. What about the obligations of faith? We all know a lot of people that would have given up and walked off. Jesus ignored her. The disciples played the race card, trying to get rid of her. Jesus even compared her to dogs, yet she persisted. She stayed right there. Most of us 21st century people, we would have thrown up our hands in frustration, and some of us would have stormed off angry. I don't need this anymore. Oh, if I've heard that once, I've heard it 1,000 times. So much for your God of love. Where was he when I needed him? I prayed and prayed and prayed and nothing happened. I don't want anything to do with your bigoted religion. It's so narrow. You preach of compassion. Where was the church when I needed it? I don't want to have anything to do with you, your God, or your religion. Not if it's like that. You've heard it. You may have even said it. I've said it. God, where were you when I really needed you? He's the same place when I didn't need him. He was on the throne. He was powerful. He was able to do exceedingly abundantly above anything that I could ask or think. But I wasn't in the right place. This woman never went there. We react that way when we don't get what we want, when we want it, and how we want it. We think we're going to dictate to God. I want this, I want it now, and I want it done this way. This woman never went there. She stayed firm in spite of everything that was thrown her way. Why? She was persistent because there was too much at stake. Her daughter's existence was at stake. Her daughter needed to be delivered from bondage. Her family needed to be saved. She needed help, and she was determined to get it. A crumb might be all that she can get, but she knew that a crumb from his hand would be more than enough. Sometimes we ask God, and he drops a crumb to us, and we say, is that all? Is this what you're offering me? Forget that. We want the whole loaf. If you really care, you give me a banquet. She was not going to give up until she got that crumb, because she knew that that was going to be enough, and Jesus was her only answer. So let me ask you, what does your problem mean to you? Have you encountered some obstacles along the way and it's made you throw up your hands or question God or quit seeking God about the answer that you needed? What's happening in your situation? Have you looked at the hypocrisy of the church? Oh, believe me, this church is full of hypocrisy. Look at that person next to you. They may be a culprit. They might be a part of that hypocrisy movement. What's it going to do to your faith? Does your faith depend on everybody else acting right? I'm not going to a church like that. They talk about everybody. So do you. So do most other churches. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, if you find the perfect church, don't go there because you'll ruin it. There's too much at stake to quit. Your family, your daughter, whatever it may be, there's too much at stake. You might be feeling, well, people don't care. The church don't care. Jesus don't care. And if all of you don't care, then why should I care? Have you decided that God won't help you? Jesus can't save you because you're not worthy? I sat in a jail cell. That's easy. Jail cell. Put my arms around an older gentleman years ago. And he said, "Preacher, don't waste your time on me. I'm not worthy. I've tried to get off this wagon so many times." He said, "I've disappointed my wife." And he had the most sweet, wonderful wife that you'd ever meet. And he said, "Preacher, don't even try. Don't waste your time. I'm just not worthy. I'm a failure. And the only thing I'll ever be is a drunk." And I said, "You don't have to be." And I said, "I believe in you. And I want to take you home. And me and your wife, we will pray this out of you." He said, "You can't do it." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I can. You don't know me. I am dumb and stubborn." And oh, yes, I can. And for the next 4 years that I was at that church, that man sat on the fourth row from the front on this side by the wall. And his wife sat beside him. And she had one of the biggest smiles on her face. If I had a work day, he was the first one at my work day. If I said we're going visiting, he was the first one to show up. If I said I need somebody to stand with me, he was the first one to walk up and stand beside me. He never missed a tithe. He never missed an offering. He was right there every time. And he never took another drink. Never. And one night, when I was praying at the end of the service, he knelt down next to me. And he said, "Preacher, you believed in me when nobody else did, and I didn't even believe in me." And he said, "I want you to know I'll never disappoint you." I'll stay true to your faith. Because every time I'm tempted, I look at the devil and I say, no, 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 no. That little pastor believes in me. And Brother McGee never took another drink. You know exactly who I'm talking about. There's too much at stake to give up. Keep bringing that need before God. You keep knocking on heaven's door until Jesus answers, because He will. Be like that poor mother. Keep seeking His face until He responds. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. And in His time, He'll hand you down a loaf of answered prayer. Matthew chapter 7 verses 7 and 8 says, ask and it'll be given to you. Seek and you'll find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be open. I want to look at the woman's prize for just a moment. I realize this is taking a long time. But I'm not in a hurry, and I hope you're not. Matthew chapter 15, verse 28. Then Jesus said to her, woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted. And her daughter was healed at that moment. Jesus responded to her faith. He was amazed by the depth of her faith. Jesus had tested her faith with harsh words, and her faith had risen to the challenge and overcome. Her faith exceeded that of the people that He was sent for. The Jews didn't believe Him. The Jews mocked Him. And the Jews killed Him. Here was a Gentile dog that had more faith than the scribes, the Pharisees, Sadducees, and priests. That kind of faith excites Jesus, and it still does today. I believe heaven gets excited when they see somebody's faith grow to the place where they won't give up. That kind of faith gets rewarded, and Jesus rewarded her faith. He rewarded her faith by giving her exactly what she asked for. He healed her daughter that moment. Her faith was so strong that she never even asked Him for proof. He said, your daughter is healed. She said, thank you, and turned around and walked away. Never asking for any kind of proof. She took Jesus at His word. She went home to her family, knowing that it had been done. What a blessing. What a challenge. What a change. I realize that some of you in this very room are looking at situations and problems that are every bit as hard as what this woman faced. I know that many of you have prayed and sought God and knocked on heaven's door until your knuckles are raw. You sought God about a solution, and things still remain the same. I know the devil and your flesh is telling you in every whisper, right in your ear, right now. They're saying it's no use. God don't care. God hadn't answered your prayer. Go away and don't bother him anymore. Just leave it alone. It's never going to change. I know that there are some folks that's discouraged and defeated that are watching on computer. Defeated. And you wonder if there's any use, any help, any reason to pray even one more time. I'm telling you, all of you, take heart today. Let your faith arise, because there is hope. Today might be that day. It might be next week, might be next month, but it could be today when the Master responds to your cries. Today might be the day when you see that mountain start to shake and move in your life. Out of the way. Today might be the day you come to him and call for help, and he says, all right, I'm going to take care of it. Today might be the day when his peace replaces your pain and you get the help you needed. Whatever need, and so many of you signified a need last week. Whatever it is, bring it with faith in your heart. And I guarantee you, before long, you'll hear that he'll help you, he'll fix it, he'll take care of it. I know what your thoughts could be. I know what Satan is saying to you. That preacher don't understand what you're going through. That preacher don't understand your problem. Your problem's worse than anybody else's. That's right. I might not understand the depth of your problem, but he does. And he gave me this message, and he knew you'd be here today. So you better pay attention, because he's talking to you. He's talking to me. He's talking to Susan, but he's talking to you too. Let's just run through one or two things and I'll be finished. I promise. Take a look at Jairus. He placed his daughters in the hand of Jesus. His daughter was only sick when he put her there. Then she died. And Jesus raised her back up. Look at Lazarus. 4 days he'd been in the tomb and he stunk. Mary and Martha placed him in the hands of Jesus. They were hoping he could do something. And Lazarus walked out of the tomb. Look at the multitude that had no food and they were hungry and they were way out in the wilderness. Few loaves and fishes were placed in the hand of Jesus, and everybody went home with a full belly, and the disciples went home with a full basket. Look at the disciples in the boat, in the storm, in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the night. Some of them were fishermen. They thought they were going to die. They placed themselves in the hands of Jesus, and every one of them got out of the boat and stepped on shore because they made it safe. Look at the leper. One touch, he's totally healed. Look at the blind man. A little mud on his eye, he can see perfect. 20/20. Look at the deaf man. Jesus touched his fingers to his tongue, then in the ear, and the man can hear perfect. Look at the crippled man. Can't walk since birth. Jesus said, pick up your mat and take off, buddy. And everybody saw him walk away. Look at the man who was possessed with a demon. One word from Jesus and he's free. Look at Jesus hanging on the cross. He's dead. They take that dead body down, put it in the tomb. 3 days later, he walks out and he's alive. Sitting at the right hand of the Father right now for me and you. If those things can happen, and that's just a small sample, don't you think he can handle your situation? Surely he can heal you. He can deliver you. He can bring your lost ones, loved ones to Jesus. He can answer your prayers. He can restore relationships. Surely he can take whatever's wrong in your life and make it right. But you'll have to believe him. You'll have to stand in the face of every obstacle and say, I believe you, Lord, and I'm going to stand on your word. A little crumb is sufficient. It's all you need. And he will give it to you in a heartbeat. I know a God that'll meet you where you live. And he'll do what you're asking. Maybe your faith needs to step up a notch. It can do that today.